In this video, we're going to talk about how to collect our quality control and quality assurance samples, or QA/QC for short. We take QA/QC samples in our sample collection procedure to ensure the credibility of the data that we're collecting and sharing. There are three types of QA/QC samples we typically collect. These are the temperature blank, the field blank, and the duplicate sample. We'll start off by talking about the temperature blank. A temperature blank is used to make sure that our samples are being stored at the proper temperature. A temperature blank is a QA/QC sample that's collected at your first sample collection location. It's stored and transported with your other collected samples, but upon arrival at the lab, we take the temperature of this water sample to help us determine the temperature of the other water samples in your cooler. US EPA guidelines recommend storing your E. coli samples at 10 degrees Celsius or less during transport. By checking the temperature of our sample back at the lab, we're making sure that our cooler was cool enough to meet this guideline. A temperature blank is collected at your first sample collection location, just like it will say on your map. At this first site, you'll grab the WorldPack labeled temperature blank, as well as the WorldPack you'll use to collect your first water sample. With both of these WorldPacks in hand, you'll wade into the water and collect both of these water samples at your first location. The procedure for collecting a temperature blank is the exact same procedure we follow for collecting a regular water sample, just as is being demonstrated in this video. If you need a bit more of a refresher on how to collect that water sample, you can always watch the training video on how to collect a water sample. In addition to collecting a temperature blank, you'll also use a thermometer to record the temperature of the water at Site A. You'll place your thermometer in the water and leave it there until the temperature reading stabilizes. It depends on the type of thermometer you have, but this could take between 30 seconds or up to a minute. Once you have a stable temperature reading, you'll relay this information to your recorder. The recorder will write this information down on the field data sheet. Once you've collected your temperature blank, your sample for Site A, and the temperature of the water, you can wade out of the water. You'll put both the temperature blank and the sample in your cooler. After this, you can go on and collect the rest of your samples. You won't have to worry about your temperature blank again until you're back at the lab. Upon arrival of the samples at the lab technician will use a thermometer to take the temperature of the temperature blank. If the temperature of the sample is 10 degrees Celsius or less, or if the temperature of the sample is lower than the water temperature when the sample was taken, it means we have met this quality control step and can move on to processing our samples. Now we'll move on to the next sample in this video, the duplicate sample. As the name might suggest, a duplicate sample is a copy of an actual sample. A duplicate sample is taken at the exact same location and as close as possible to the exact same time as the original sample. The idea is that if we're properly following our collection procedure, the duplicate sample, when analyzed later, should have almost the exact same amount of E. coli in it as the original sample. If there's a large difference between our sample results, this tells us that our sample collection procedure may have not been properly followed. Duplicate samples are randomly assigned and predetermined, so that when you're in the field, all you have to do is identify the WorldPack with the modifier DUP, or DUP. You should identify this WorldPack upon arrival at your site so you know where you'll be taking a duplicate sample. The duplicate sample must be taken within 2 minutes of the original sample. Outside of this time frame, we're more likely to see a difference between the water quality results of our duplicate and real sample. At the site where you're collecting a duplicate sample, you'll take 2 WorldPacks into the water. The WorldPack designated for the actual sample at this location, and the WorldPack with that same label plus the modifier DUP. You'll sanitize your hands and wade into the water to collect both of these samples, following the standard sample collection protocol. The only special procedure is that both of these samples must be collected in a 2-minute time range. If you're unable to collect your samples within 2 minutes of each other, you can always try again. Once you've successfully collected both samples, the recorder will record the time each sample was taken on the field data sheet. You'll put these samples in your cooler and move on to the next site. The final QA/QC sample we'll talk about is the field blank. The field blank is a sample of clean water we fill before we head out into the field. It is handled with the rest of your samples throughout the sample collection and processing procedure. The purpose of the field blank is to detect sample contamination due to human error. The field blank is used to verify the purity of your samples and identify potential contamination issues. If when we analyze the field blank, there's E. coli in it, We know that there may have been a contamination issue, and we must deem the rest of our samples non-viable. We fill our field blank with distilled water before we head into the field. We do this carefully, making sure nothing touches the inside of our Whirlpak. We want to make sure we're wearing gloves and filling the field blank in a sanitary environment. We fill the Whirlpak to 100 milliliters and whirl it up just like we do with other samples. We then place the sample in our sample collection container, put the sample in our cooler, and then we're ready to head out to our sample collection location. When you're in the field, you'll take the field blank out once during your monitoring session. While wearing gloves, you'll expose the sample to the environment. You'll then seal the sample once again and place it back in your cooler. You'll then check off that you've completed this step on your sample collection datasheet. And that's it! You now know all about the standard QA/QC samples we use to carry out fieldwork and make sure that we have credible water quality results. If you're looking for information on what to do with these samples back in the lab, you can refer to our toolkit items and the Swim Drink Fish standard operating procedures. Thanks for watching!